Before I start, do me a favor. Comment where you're listening from. Bedroom, car, headphones at night. Doesn't matter. Just tell me, because if this story disappears tomorrow, at least I'll know somebody somewhere heard it before they erased me. Look, I need you to understand something about being a Navy SEAL before I tell you what happened in Ramadi. We don't ask questions. We don't hesitate. When you get orders that sound impossible, orders that seem designed to get you killed, you don't say why or how. You say yes, sir, and you start preparing to do the impossible. That's exactly what happened to me on a Tuesday morning I'll never forget. I was Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison, call sign Reaper, and I'd been a SEAL for 12 years. 12 years of missions I can't talk about, in places that don't officially exist, doing things that never happened according to any government record. But this one mission in Ramadi, changed everything I thought I knew about warfare, about brotherhood, about what it means to be human. The briefing room fell dead silent when Admiral Richard Hayes walked in. This wasn't just any admiral. This was a man whose chest carried more medals than most museums, a man who'd sent hundreds of operators into situations they'd barely survived. When he looked worried, we all paid attention. And that morning, Admiral Hayes looked terrified. He stood at the front of the room, and for a long moment, he didn't say anything. Just stared at a map covered in red dots like a disease spreading across the screen. Finally, he spoke, and his voice had this quality I'd never heard before. Fear mixed with desperation. One of our own is trapped behind enemy lines in Ramadi. CIA operative. The intel says he's got 12 hours before they move him, and after that, we won't find him alive. I watched the other SEALs shift uncomfortably in their seats. Ramadi wasn't just dangerous. It was a meat grinder. American soldiers called it the most lethal city in Iraq, and they weren't exaggerating. I'd been there before, seen things that still haunted my dreams. Streets where you couldn't walk 10 feet without crossing someone's gun sights. Buildings that hid snipers in every window. A city where death waited around every corner. Then Admiral Hayes dropped the real bombshell. 40 hostile targets. 1 block. Fortified compound. No support available. Airstrike would kill our guy. Ground assault would alert them. We need 1 man to go in alone. The temperature in that room dropped about 20 degrees. You could hear guys breathing harder, processing what he was really asking. This wasn't a mission. This was a mathematical impossibility wrapped in a suicide note. Someone in the front row muttered under their breath. That's not a mission. That's a death sentence. That's when Admiral Hayes looked directly at me. Reaper. You're up. Every head in that room turned. I felt their eyes on me, measuring, wondering if I was crazy enough to accept what amounted to a death sentence. But here's what they didn't understand about me, about why they called me Reaper in the first place. I'd never lost a teammate. Not one. Not ever. 3 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. 47 confirmed kills. Dozens of missions that should have gotten us all killed. But every single man I'd ever led into combat had come home alive. Some people called it luck. Others called it something darker. The stories about me had started in Fallujah, during the worst of the fighting in 2004. My team had been tasked with clearing a block of buildings that intelligence said housed a high-value target. What they didn't tell us was that the entire block was one massive trap. 18 rooms, each one filled with insurgents waiting to ambush us. My team went in expecting a quick operation. What we found was hell on earth. Room after room of enemies, each one more prepared than the last. By the 3rd building, we were low on ammunition, exhausted, and surrounded. That's when my team leader went down, took a round through the throat that should have killed him instantly. I was just a junior operator then, barely 25 years old. But I made a decision in that moment that changed everything. I told my team to hold position, to keep our wounded alive. Then I went forward alone. 18 rooms. I cleared every single one by myself. When my team finally caught up to me, they found bodies stacked in hallways, blood on walls, and me standing in the last room covered in so much gore they couldn't tell if any of it was mine. It wasn't. Not a scratch. Not even a graze. They started calling me Reaper after that. Said I moved through enemy positions like death itself, silent and unstoppable. Said I had some kind of sixth sense that let me know where enemies were before they knew themselves. Said I couldn't be killed because death recognized one of its own and refused to take me. The truth was simpler and more terrifying. I just refused to let my brothers die. Whatever it took, whatever sacrifices were needed, I made them. And somehow, impossibly, I always brought everyone home. Then there was Mosul. That operation still gave me nightmares, not because of what happened, but because of how close we came to losing everything. We'd been tasked with extracting 3 wounded Marines who'd been pinned down by enemy fire for 6 hours. The entire area was a kill zone. Snipers on every rooftop. Machine gun nests covering every approach. No one in their right mind would have attempted a rescue. But those Marines were running out of time. They'd already lost 2 men. The survivors were bleeding out, running low on ammunition, and calling for help that everyone said was impossible to provide. I volunteered to go in with my team. 4 of us against what intelligence estimated was over 100 enemy fighters. The math didn't work. The odds were suicide. But we went anyway because that's what SEALs do. The extraction took 4 miles of running through urban warfare while carrying 3 wounded Marines who couldn't walk. 4 miles of constant enemy contact, of bullets so thick you could hear them cutting the air around you, of explosions so close you could feel the heat on your face. My team took turns carrying the wounded, covering each other, moving through spaces that should have been impassable. Ghost took a round through his leg during that extraction. Kept fighting anyway, kept moving, refused to slow us down. Doc got hit by shrapnel that tore through his side. Patched himself up while still running and didn't mention it until we were safe. Havoc got concussed by an explosion that threw him 20 feet. Got up, shook it off, and kept shooting. We made it out with all 3 Marines alive. My team was recommended for Silver Stars. I was recommended for the Navy Cross but turned it down. Medals didn't matter. What mattered was that we'd brought our brothers home. After Mosul, the stories about me grew. They said I could see through walls, that I could predict enemy movements before they happened, that I was protected by something supernatural. The truth was I just paid attention. I studied enemy tactics until I could think like them. I trained until every movement was automatic. And I cared more about my team's survival than my own life. That's what made me the right man for this Ramadi mission. Not because I was the best shooter or the fastest runner or the strongest fighter. But because when faced with impossible odds, when death was the only logical outcome, I found ways to bring people home anyway. So when Admiral Hayes looked at me in that briefing room and asked if I could extract Torres from a compound held by 40 enemy fighters, I didn't think about the odds. I didn't calculate survival rates, or consider the tactical impossibility of what he was asking. I just thought about Torres. One of ours. Trapped. Alone. Waiting for someone to come get him. I stood up, and the room got even quieter if that was possible. He's one of ours, I said. My voice came out flat, emotionless, the way it always did when I was making a decision that would probably get me killed. I'll bring him home. Admiral Hayes nodded slowly, and I saw something flicker in his eyes. Relief, maybe? Or guilt? Probably both. He knew what he was asking. Knew that the chances of me coming back alive were minimal at best. But he also knew that Torres deserved better than to die alone in an enemy prison. You leave in 3 hours, Hayes said, then added quietly, Godspeed, Morrison. The brief was simple and terrifying. Our asset, CIA operative Michael Torres, was being held in a 3-story fortified building in the worst part of Ramadi. Intelligence showed 40 enemy fighters in and around the compound. Armed to the teeth. Expecting trouble. Ready to kill anyone who came for their prisoner. Torres had been working deep cover for 6 months, gathering intelligence on insurgent networks. Somehow his cover had been blown. They'd grabbed him 3 days ago, and the intelligence we were receiving suggested they were preparing to execute him on video. A propaganda coup that would show American operatives being killed on camera. We had 2 hours to extract Torres and get to the exfil point. 2 hours to do what an entire platoon couldn't accomplish without massive casualties. 2 hours to prove that leaving no man behind wasn't just a motto, it was a promise we kept no matter the cost. But I wouldn't be going alone. Not entirely. My team assembled in the armory without me having to call them. That's brotherhood for you. When word spreads that Reaper is going on a suicide mission, his team shows up ready to die alongside him. Carlos Havoc Reyes was checking his shotgun when I walked in. Havoc was built like a tank, pure muscle and aggression wrapped in tactical gear. He could kick through reinforced doors and move like smoke when needed. We'd served together for 8 years. He had a wife and a 5-year-old daughter named Emma back in San Diego. She thought Daddy went on business trips. Had no idea he spent his business trips breaking into enemy compounds and killing people who needed killing. Havoc had his daughter's picture in his vest pocket, right over his heart. He kissed it before every mission, whispered something I could never hear, then became the most dangerous breacher in the teams. Tommy Doc Williams was organizing his medical kit with the precision of a surgeon. Doc could have been a doctor in any hospital in America. Instead, he'd chosen to become a SEAL medic, to bring his skills to the places where they were needed most. He'd pulled more men from death's door than any hospital, working under fire, performing emergency surgery in conditions that would make most doctors quit. Doc had lost patients before. Good men who'd bled out in his arms despite everything he tried. Those faces haunted him. You could see it in his eyes sometimes, the weight of lives he couldn't save. But it never stopped him from trying, never made him hesitate when another brother went down. Marcus Ghostchin was assembling his rifle with the care of a man preparing a sacred ritual. Ghost was our sniper, and he was the best I'd ever seen. Could put a round through a keyhole at 800 meters in a sandstorm. He had this way of becoming completely still, completely focused, where the world narrowed down to just him and his target. Ghost rarely spoke. Didn't need to. His rifle did all his talking. But when he did speak, people listened because Ghost saw things others missed. He could read a battlefield like a book, predict enemy movements, find shots that shouldn't have been possible. David Prophet Jackson was the youngest member of our team, just 28, but already a legend in the intelligence community. Prophet could hack enemy systems, jam their signals, and call in air support all while under fire. He joined the SEALs after spending 5 years with the NSA, decided he wanted to put his skills to use in the field rather than behind a desk. Prophet had this ability to process information faster than anyone I'd ever met. Give him 30 seconds with a laptop and he could tell you everything about an enemy network. Their communications frequencies, their guard rotations, their weaknesses. He was our eyes and ears, our connection to the larger battlefield. They were already gearing up when I walked in. Nobody said anything at first. They didn't have to. We'd been through enough missions together that words were unnecessary. They knew what I was planning. Knew the odds. Knew that statistically, some of us weren't coming home. And they were there anyway. This is voluntary, I told them, even though I knew what they'd say. What we're walking into, odds say we don't all come back. Havoc chambered a round in his shotgun, the metallic sound echoing in the armory. Good thing we don't believe in odds, boss. He grinned, but his eyes were serious. Besides, Emma's birthday is next week. Promised her I'd be there. Can't break promises to a 5-year-old. Doc tightened his medkit straps, checking every piece of equipment one more time. We go in together. We come out together. That's the only math that matters. He looked at me directly. You've never lost one of us, Reaper. Not planning to be the first. Ghost adjusted his scope, peering through it at an imaginary target across the armory. Besides, you've never lost one of us. Not planning to let you start now. His voice was quiet, but there was steel in it. 40 tangos means 40 opportunities for me to practice my craft. Prophet connected the comms system, running diagnostics on our communication equipment. Intel says 40 hostiles? I say they're the ones who should be worried. He looked up from his laptop. I've been monitoring their radio traffic. They're expecting an airstrike, or a large-scale ground assault. They're not expecting 5 ghosts to walk right through their defenses. I looked at each of them. These men would follow me into hell. Had followed me into hell, multiple times. And every single time, I'd brought them home. Wounded sometimes, traumatized often, but alive. Always alive. This time would be no different. Rules of engagement are simple, I said quietly. Silent until we can't be. Fast when we need to be. Brutal when we have to be. I locked eyes with each operator. Our brothers in there. Nothing stops us. The gear check took an hour. Every weapon zeroed. Every magazine checked. Every piece of equipment tested 3 times. When you're going into a situation where equipment failure means death, you don't take chances. You check everything until checking becomes ritual, until the ritual becomes meditation, until the meditation becomes certainty. My rifle was a custom 416 Hong Kong dollars, modified over years of combat until it was an extension of my body. I'd killed with this weapon in 7 countries, in environments ranging from Arctic cold to desert heat. The grip was worn smooth where my hands naturally fell. The barrel had been replaced twice. The trigger had been adjusted until it broke exactly the way I wanted. I loaded 6 magazines, 30 rounds each. 180 rounds total. For 40 enemies, that meant I could afford to miss 4 out of every 5 shots. But I didn't plan on missing. My sidearm was a SIG P226, reliable and deadly at close range. 3 magazines, 15 rounds each. 45 rounds of backup firepower for when things got too close for rifle work. 2 flashbangs. 1 smoke grenade. 4 frag grenades. A combat knife that had saved my life more times than I could count. Breaching charges for doors that wouldn't open nicely. Medical supplies for wounds that would inevitably come. Zip ties for prisoners we probably wouldn't take. Water for the 2-hour operation that would feel like 2 days. The weight of all that gear should have been crushing. 80 pounds of weapons, ammunition, body armor, and equipment. But we trained with this weight until it felt natural. Until running, shooting, fighting, and thinking clearly while carrying it became automatic. We loaded into the Black Hawk as night swallowed Ramadi whole. The city sprawled below us, a maze of concrete and danger where every shadow could hide death. The helicopter cut through darkness, rotors thumping like a heartbeat racing toward destiny. I could see the city through the open door of the helicopter. Ramadi spread out beneath us like a cancer. Buildings destroyed by years of fighting, streets empty of civilians who'd learned to stay inside when darkness fell. Occasional lights flickered in windows. Muzzle flashes sparkled in distant neighborhoods where other battles raged. Smoke rose from fires that had been burning for days. This city had killed so many Americans. Good soldiers, good Marines, good men who'd come here to help and ended up in body bags instead. The entire place felt cursed. Like the ground itself wanted us dead. But somewhere in that maze of death and violence, Torres was waiting. Hoping someone would come. Hoping that the promise of leaving no man behind wasn't just empty words. The crew chief, a grizzled sergeant who'd been flying these routes for 3 years, came over to check our gear. You boys sure about this? He had to shout over the rotor noise. 40 tangos is a lot of DACA coming your way. I looked at him with those cold eyes that made people uncomfortable. We're SEALs. 40 or 400 doesn't matter. We bring our brother home. The sergeant nodded, respect clear in his eyes. Hoa Reaper. I'll have this bird ready for exfil. You just get there alive. The pilot's voice crackled through our headsets. 10 minutes to insertion. Ramadi is lit up like Christmas tonight. Lots of movement. They're expecting something. Good, I said calmly. Let them expect us. They'll never see us coming. The city grew closer, larger, more detailed. I could make out individual buildings now, see the streets we'd be moving through, identify the compound where Torres was being held. The target building stood out even from the air, 3 stories of reinforced concrete in the middle of a block that had been cleared of other structures to create good fields of fire for the defenders. It was a fortress, designed to be impenetrable, built to withstand attacks from conventional military forces. The kind of position that would require artillery and air support to crack. But we weren't conventional military forces. We were SEALs. And SEALs specialized in doing the impossible. Havoc was staring at his daughter's picture again, lips moving silently. Whatever prayer or promise he was making, it was between him and Emma. When he finally put the picture away and looked up, his face had transformed. The loving father was gone. What remained was pure violence waiting to be unleashed. Doc had his eyes closed, breathing slowly, centering himself. He did this before every mission, found that place of calm where he could perform emergency surgery while bullets flew overhead. Where he could hold a man's life in his hands and not let fear or doubt slow his work. Ghost was checking his rifle one more time, making microscopic adjustments to his scope that probably didn't need adjustment. It was his ritual, his way of preparing mentally for what was coming. When he finally looked up, his eyes had that distant quality that meant he was already on target, already tracking enemies who didn't know they were dead yet. Prophet was running last-minute checks on our communications equipment, making sure we'd have secure channels, making sure he could intercept enemy radio traffic. Making sure that when things went wrong, and they always went wrong, we'd still be able to coordinate. The Black Hawk began its descent, dropping fast and hard. The pilot was good, bringing us in low and fast to minimize our time as a target. The door gunner had his minigun trained on the landing zone, ready to provide covering fire if we needed it. 5 minutes, the pilot said. LZ is cold. No visible hostiles. But that doesn't mean they're not there. I stood up, checked my team one more time. Everyone ready? 4 nods. 4 warriors prepared to walk into hell because one of their brothers needed them to. Remember, I said. We're ghosts. We go in quiet. We find Torres. We extract. If we do this right, they'll never know we were there until it's too late. The helicopter pilot's voice came through one more time, tension clear in his words. 1 minute. Good hunting, gentlemen. The Black Hawk flared hard, rotors screaming as we came to hover 3 feet above a rooftop on the edge of the target area. The crew chief gave us the signal. Go, go, go. I was first out, boots hitting concrete in silence despite the drop. My team followed in rapid succession, spreading out in practice formation like a well-oiled machine. 5 seconds and we were all on the rooftop. The Black Hawk was already pulling away, disappearing into the night sky, leaving us alone in enemy territory. The silence after the helicopter left was profound. Just the sound of wind across the rooftop, distant gunfire from other parts of the city, and our own control breathing. We were committed now. No support. No backup. No help coming if things went wrong. Exactly the way we liked it. I hand-signaled my team. Prophet, give me a sitrep. The situation report came back immediately through our encrypted comms. 4 guards ground level, east and west entrances. 2 roaming patrols, 1 moving north, 1 south. No indication they've spotted us. The compound is 2 blocks northeast. You've got a 10-minute window before the next patrol rotation. 10 minutes. Plenty of time if everything went perfectly. Not nearly enough if anything went wrong. We moved to the edge of the rooftop. The descent route I'd chosen during planning was a narrow gap between buildings, just wide enough for a man in full gear to slip through. It would put us on the ground in shadow, invisible from the street. I went first, rappelling down 30 feet of brick wall in complete silence. My team followed one by one, each man descending with the same ghost-like quiet that had given me my call sign. When all 5 of us were on the ground, we stacked up in movement formation and began the 2-block movement to the target compound. Moving through Ramadi at night was like moving through a graveyard. Empty streets. Abandoned buildings. The occasional distant sound of gunfire reminding you that death was never far away. Every window was a potential sniper position. Every doorway a potential ambush. Every pile of rubble a possible IED. But we moved like water, flowing around obstacles, never presenting a target, never making noise. Ghost was on point, his sharp eyes scanning for threats. Havoc and Prophet covered our flanks. Doc brought up the rear, walking backward half the time to make sure nothing was coming up behind us. And I moved in the center, coordinating everything, making sure we stayed invisible. The first guards we encountered were at the corner of the first block, two men smoking cigarettes and talking in low voices. They never saw us coming. Ghost neutralized them both in complete silence, his blade work efficient and deadly. We dragged the bodies into shadow, zip-tied and gagged them. They'd wake up with headaches, but they'd wake up. Dead bodies created problems. Unconscious ones just created confusion. We moved past them and entered the second block. This was the dangerous part. The area immediately around the target compound had been cleared of cover. Any approach in the last 100 meters would be exposed, visible to the guards on the walls and rooftops. Prophet, I need exact positions on all external security. His fingers flew over his tablet. Working the thermals now. Okay, I've got 2 on the roof, northwest and southeast corners. 4 on ground level, 1 at each cardinal direction. Roaming patrols have moved off. You've got a 3-minute window before the next pass. 3 minutes? Not enough time for a conventional approach. But we weren't conventional. Ghost, can you reach those rooftop positions from here? He pulled out a small rangefinder, took readings, calculated wind and distance. Affirmative. 740 meters to the northwest position, 810 to southeast. Clean shots if I can set up. Do it. Take them out simultaneously on my mark. The rest of us move the second those shots are fired. We'll have maybe 60 seconds of confusion before they realize they're under attack. Ghost moved off to find his shooting position. The rest of us waited, counting seconds, watching the guards below continue their patrols, completely unaware that death was watching them from the darkness. 1 minute passed. 2. Then Ghost's voice came through comms, calm and professional. In position. Both targets acquired. Ready on your mark. I watched the guards below, waited until they were at the worst possible positions to respond to an attack, scattered and separated. Now. 2 suppressed shots, so quiet they could have been mistaken for distant car doors closing. Both rooftop guards dropped instantly, dead before they knew they were in danger. We were moving before the bodies hit the ground. Sprinting across the open ground, eating up the 100 meters in seconds. The guards on the ground level were still processing the fact that something was wrong when we hit them like a tornado. I took the north guard, coming up behind him and putting him down with a quick strike to the head that left him unconscious but alive. Havoc and Prophet hit the east and west guards simultaneously. Doc secured our rear approach. 4 guards neutralized in under 10 seconds. We stacked up at the compound's main entrance, a heavy door that had been reinforced with steel plating. Havoc, how do you want to play this? He examined the door, running his hands over the hinges and locks. Breaching charge will be too loud. But this lock is old, Soviet era. Give me 30 seconds. We waited while Havoc worked his magic with lockpicks. The man could break into anything given time. 27 seconds later, the lock clicked open. We're in. Prophet, what's the interior layout? His hacking had paid off. I'm looking at their security camera feeds now. 12 hostiles ground floor, scattered through multiple rooms. 8 on second floor. 5 on third. Torres is third floor, northwest corner, right where we thought. 2 guards outside his door. 25 hostiles inside. 15 more outside somewhere in the patrol patterns. Our element of surprise wouldn't last long once we breached. We'd go quiet as long as possible. Suppressors only? Make every shot count. Remember, Torres is the priority. Everything else is secondary. I pulled the door open slowly, checking for squeaks or resistance. It swung smoothly, well maintained despite everything else about this place. We flowed inside like smoke, splitting up to clear the ground floor systematically. The interior of the compound was a maze of rooms and hallways, typical of Iraqi construction. Rooms opened into other rooms without clear corridors. It made navigation confusing but also made our style of close-quarters combat deadly effective. The first hostile we encountered, Doc put him down with a suppressed round through the head. The man collapsed without a sound, his meal forgotten. We moved through the ground floor like silent death, clearing rooms one by one. Each hostile went down before they could raise an alarm. Suppressed rounds to the head or heart. Quick. Efficient. Professional. This was what we trained for, what we'd done in dozens of operations across multiple war zones. Room by room, the ground floor cleared. 12 hostiles became 12 bodies. Not one of them had time to cry out or raise an alarm. Prophet, give me the second floor layout. 8 tangos. They're more alert up there. Looks like they're expecting possible ground floor breach. 3 in a hallway watching the stairs. 5 in rooms flanking the hallway. That was going to be harder. Alerted enemies with good positions. This was where the mission could go sideways fast. We need a distraction. Something to pull their attention away from the stairwell. Ghost's voice came through comms. I can help with that. Give me a target window. I pulled up the building schematic on my tactical display. Window on the south side, second floor. Think you can put a round through it? Consider it done. On my mark. 3, 2, 1 mark. A window on the far side of the building exploded inward as Ghost's precision round shattered it. The sound of breaking glass and the round punching through the interior wall created exactly the distraction we needed. The 3 guards watching the stairs immediately oriented toward the noise, weapons up, shouting at each other. We were already moving. I hit the stairs fast and hard, coming up with my rifle shouldered and ready. The 3 guards were still focused on the broken window when I acquired the first target. 1 suppressed round. He dropped. Before the others could react, Doc and Prophet were in position. 2 more the other 5 hostiles on the second floor knew something was wrong. They were calling out, checking rooms, weapons raised and ready for contact. This was about to get loud. The first hostile appeared in the doorway, weapon coming up as he spotted us. My rifle spoke twice. He went down hard. But his weapon fired on the way down, a burst of automatic fire that tore through the wall next to Prophet's head. The sound of that gunfire was like an alarm going off. Suddenly the entire compound was alert. Shouts echoed through the building. Boots pounded on floors. The careful, silent operation we'd planned was turning into a running gunfight. Contact, I called into comms. Second floor is hot. We're going loud. The next few minutes were controlled chaos. Hostiles appeared in doorways and we put them down. They fired from around corners and we returned fire. The hallway became a shooting gallery with us on both ends, rounds punching through walls and doors as we systematically eliminated threats. Havoc's shotgun roared, the sound deafening in the enclosed space. At close range, nothing beat a shotgun for pure stopping power. Prophet was firing in precise bursts, his training evident in every controlled shot. Doc covered our rear, making sure no one came up the stairs behind us. The second floor cleared hard and fast. 8 hostiles down. But now we'd lost our stealth. Every fighter in the compound knew we were here. Third floor, I ordered. Torres is up there and we're running out of time. We hit the third floor stairwell just as the remaining 5 hostiles on that level organized the defense. They positioned themselves well, using the landing as a natural choke point. We couldn't advance without exposing ourselves to concentrated fire. This was the moment every operator dreaded. A fatal funnel where tactics and firepower met, and men died no matter how good they were. There's a window on the second floor that lines up with the third floor hallway. If Ghost can get an angle, he might be able to provide suppressing fire through the walls. Do it. Ghost, you heard that? Already moving to position. Give me 20 seconds. We didn't have 20 seconds. The hostiles on the third floor were preparing to come down and flush us out. I could hear them calling to each other, coordinating their attack. In maybe 10 seconds they'd come down those stairs in a rush, and we'd be forced into a close-range firefight in a confined space where the odds were even. But close-range fighting was where SEALs excelled. Havoc, on my count, we push up. Fast and hard. Flashbang first. He pulled the flashbang from his vest, armed it. Ready. 3, 2, 1. The flashbang sailed up the stairwell and detonated in a blast of light and sound designed to disorient and blind. We were moving before the blast faded, charging up the stairs with our rifles up and firing. The hostiles had been positioned perfectly to defend against a normal assault. But we weren't normal. We came up the stairs shooting, putting rounds through smoke and confusion, relying on muscle memory and training to guide our aim. Ghost's rifle joined the fight, punching through the exterior wall and hitting targets we couldn't even see. His rounds found hostiles hiding behind cover, dropping them before they could react. The firefight on the third floor was brutal and close. Too close for precision, too chaotic for careful tactics. Just raw combat at distances measured in feet instead of meters. This was where training and experience made the difference between survival and death. I felt the round tug at my vest, absorbed by body armor. Another round passed so close to my head I felt the heat. Havoc took a hit to his shoulder but kept fighting, his shotgun never stopping its deadly work. Doc was hit by shrapnel from a grenade, fragments tearing through his gear. But his hands never stopped moving, never stopped working his rifle. And then suddenly it was over. 5 hostiles down. Third floor clear. Torres, where's Torres? Prophet pointed at a door at the end of the hallway. Northwest corner room, 2 guards outside according to the last intel. We stacked up on the door. This was it. This was why we'd come. Everything else, all the fighting, all the casualties, all the risk, was for what was behind this door. On 3. 1, 2, 3. Havoc's boot hit the door, and it exploded inward. We flooded into the room, weapons raised, ready for anything. 2 guards inside, bringing their weapons up. I shot the first one twice, center mass. Prophet took the second one before he could fire a shot. And there, chained to a radiator in the corner, beaten and bloody but alive, was Torres. He looked up at us with eyes that were hollow from days of torture and fear. Then he saw the American flag patches on our shoulders, and something changed in his expression. Hope. Relief. Recognition that his nightmare was over. About damn time, he croaked, his voice broken but defiant. Doc was already moving to him, cutting through the chains, checking his injuries. Broken ribs, possible internal bleeding, dehydration, signs of systematic torture. But alive. Still fighting. Can you walk? Torres tried to stand and collapsed immediately. I can crawl if I have to. Let's get out of this hellhole. Prophet and I grabbed him, supporting his weight between us. We had Torres. Mission accomplished. Now we just had to extract. Ghost, I called through comms. What's our exfil situation looking like? His voice came back tense. Not good, Reaper. The gunfire has alerted every hostile in the area. I'm counting at least 15 tangos converging on your position. You've got maybe 90 seconds before they breach the compound. 15 more. On top of the wounded, and now had to extract a man who couldn't walk while fighting through a final wave of enemies. The odds had never been worse. But we were SEALs. And SEALs don't leave anyone behind, no matter the cost. Set up defensive positions, I ordered. We hold here until the bird arrives. We dragged Torres into the most defensible room we could find and prepared for the last stand. Pushed furniture into makeshift barricades. Distributed our remaining ammunition. Prophet grabbed a dropped enemy AK-47 to supplement his dwindling ammo supply. Doc handed out the last of our grenades. Torres, despite his injuries, grabbed a weapon from one of the dead guards. I can still shoot. Then we shoot together. The sound of boots on stairs echoed through the building. Shouts in Arabic. The metallic sound of weapons being charged. An army coming for revenge. I checked my remaining ammo. 1 magazine. 30 rounds. Looked at my team. Havoc bleeding from his shoulder. Doc with shrapnel wounds. All of us running on empty. It's been an honor, gentlemen. Havoc grinned through the blood on his face. Honors all ours, Reaper. The door exploded inward and 15 hostiles poured through like a human tsunami. But they ran into something they weren't prepared for. 5 Navy SEALs who decided that dying wasn't on today's agenda. My rifle sang its deadly song, each round finding flesh. Havoc's shotgun roared like thunder, turning the doorway into a meat grinder. Prophet's captured AK chattered in controlled bursts. Doc, bleeding from multiple wounds, worked his rifle with surgical precision. And Torres, beaten and broken, put rounds downrange with the grim determination of a man who'd already been to hell and refused to go back. The hallway became a charnel house. Bodies stacked up at the entrance. The hostiles tried to push through, but we held the line. Professional. Disciplined. Deadly. My rifle clicked empty. I dropped it, pulled my sidearm, kept firing. Never stopped. Never slowed. 30 seconds to exfil, Prophet shouted over the chaos. A hostile made it through the doorway. Havoc took him down with his last shotgun shell, then pulled his knife. Because that's what you do when the bullets stop. You keep fighting. 20 seconds. I took another round, this time through my leg. The pain was white-hot, immediate, overwhelming. I dropped to one knee, fought through the agony, kept shooting. Reapers hit, Doc yelled. I'm operational. Hold position. The sound of rotor blades cutting through the night. Growing louder. Closer. The most beautiful sound in the world. 10 seconds. The Black Hawk appeared outside the window, door gunners already engaging. The minigun opened up, its rate of fire so high it sounded like a buzzsaw. 6,000 rounds per minute of pure destruction tearing through the building's exterior walls, cutting down hostiles who'd been trying to flank our position. Go, 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 I ordered. We moved as one, fighting and retreating simultaneously. Havoc threw our last frag grenade back through the doorway, buying us precious seconds. The explosion shook the building, dust and debris raining down. Prophet helped Doc carry Torres to the window. Ghost covering fire from his distant position kept enemy heads down. I provided rear security, emptying my pistol at targets that kept coming no matter how many we killed. The crew chief was leaning out of the helicopter, reaching for us, shouting something I couldn't hear over the roar of weapons fire and rotor wash. Havoc went first, literally throwing Torres across the gap into the helicopter. The crew chief caught him, dragged him inside. Doc jumped, made it across. Prophet followed. Just Ghost and me left. I could hear more hostiles coming up the stairs. We were out of time. Ghost, move. He ran for the window and jumped. Made it across. Grabbed by the crew chief and hauled inside. I turned back to the doorway one last time. My pistol was empty. My rifle was gone. I had nothing left but a knife and determination. 3 hostiles appeared in the doorway, weapons raised. Reaper now, the pilot screamed. I jumped backward through the window, fell 8 feet, hit the helicopter's landing skid hard enough to drive the air from my lungs. Hands grabbed me, pulled me up, dragged me inside. The Black Hawk banked hard, climbing, as rounds pinged off the armored hull. The door gunner's minigun continued its devastating work, providing covering fire as we gained altitude and distance. But we were up. We were out. We were alive. All of us. I lay on the floor of the helicopter, bleeding from my shoulder and leg, gasping for air, watching my team do the same. Havoc was pressing a field dressing to his shoulder. Doc was treating his own shrapnel wounds with shaking hands. Prophet was checking Torres's vitals, Ghost was staring out the door at the city falling away below us. The crew chief appeared above me, his face concerned. Sir, you're losing blood. Let me. I'm fine. I forced myself to sit up, ignoring the protests from my body. Check on Torres first. The crew chief moved to Torres, but the CIA operative waved him off weakly. I'm good. I'm good. He looked at me with eyes that had seen too much. You crazy son of a bitch. You actually came for me. I met his gaze. We don't leave our own behind. Ever. The flight back to base took 20 minutes that felt like 20 hours. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind pain and exhaustion and the shakes that always came after combat. My hands were trembling. My leg was throbbing. My shoulder felt like it was on fire. But we'd done it. Against impossible odds, against mathematical probability, against everything that said it couldn't be done, we'd extracted Torres and brought everyone home alive. The medical bay at base was controlled chaos. Doctors and nurses swarmed us the moment the helicopter touched down. They tried to separate us, to treat us individually, but we stayed together. That's what teams do. They worked on my leg first, the through-and-through that had somehow missed every major artery and bone. Clean wound, the doctor said. You're lucky. I didn't feel lucky. I felt like I'd been shot. My shoulder was worse. The round had tumbled, creating a larger wound channel. They need surgery to clean it out properly, remove bone fragments, repair torn muscle. But nothing that wouldn't heal with time. Havoc's shoulder wound was similar. Through and through, missing anything vital. He'd be back to full duty in 6 weeks. Doc's shrapnel wounds looked worse than they were. Dozens of small cuts and punctures, but nothing deep. They cleaned him up, stitched what needed stitching, and gave him antibiotics to prevent infection. Prophet had somehow come through completely unscathed. Not a scratch. He attributed it to divine intervention. The rest of us attributed it to blind luck. Ghost had taken a round through his calf during the final firefight that none of us had even noticed. He'd kept fighting, kept shooting, never mentioned it. The bullet had passed through muscle without hitting bone. He'd have a limp for a few weeks but would make a full recovery. Torres was in the worst shape. Broken ribs. Internal bleeding that required emergency surgery. Dehydration. Malnutrition. Burns and cuts from systematic torture. But alive. The doctors said if we'd waited another day, he probably wouldn't have made it. We'd gotten there just in time. Admiral Hayes showed up in the medical bay about an hour after we arrived. He looked at each of us, taking in the wounded, the exhausted, the survivors of a mission that should have killed us all. He didn't say anything at first. Just stood there, staring, processing what we'd accomplished. Finally, he spoke. His voice was rough with emotion. 40 hostiles. You went in against 40 hostiles to bring out one man. I met his gaze from my hospital bed. He wasn't just one man, sir. He was one of us. Hayes studied me for a long moment. Reports say you killed 27 enemy combatants. Extracted the package. Brought your entire team home alive. He paused, the weight of those words settling. Command is calling it impossible. I didn't smile. Didn't boast. Nothing's impossible when the mission matters. Hayes reached into his uniform and pulled out a small case. He opened it, revealing the Navy Cross, second highest military decoration in the United States military. He pinned it to my hospital gown, right over my heart. But I barely glanced at it. My eyes were on my team. The men who'd walked through fire with me. The brothers who'd chosen to follow me into hell one more time. With your permission, sir, I said quietly. I'd like to give my team some rest. Hayes nodded. You've earned it, son. All of you. He looked at each operator individually, his expression making it clear he understood what they'd sacrificed. What you men did tonight will be classified at the highest levels. No one outside this room will ever know the full story. But I want you to know that what you accomplished here, the courage and skill you demonstrated, represents the very best of what it means to be a Navy SEAL. As Hayes left, Doc raised his water bottle with his good hand. To Reaper. The crazy bastard who won't let us die. They all raised their bottles. Even Torres managed to lift his. To Brotherhood, I said quietly, my voice rough. The only thing worth dying for. And the only thing worth living for. We drank in silence. Warriors who'd seen the worst and chosen to be better. But the mission, as successful as it had been, came with costs that weren't immediately visible. The nightmares started that first night in the hospital. I'd close my eyes and see Torres chained to that radiator. See the hostile's face inches from mine before I killed him. See the moment when the round hit my leg and I thought I wouldn't make it out. Doc had his own nightmares. He'd see the moment when he thought we'd lose Torres, when the CIA operative's vitals had dropped during extraction and he'd had to perform emergency procedures in the helicopter while under fire. Havoc dreamed about his daughter, about Emma growing up without a father because he'd died in some Iraqi compound. He'd wake up in cold sweats, reaching for his phone to call home and hear her voice. Ghost nightmares were about the shots he'd missed. Every sniper keeps a mental record of their failures, the rounds that didn't find their mark. In his dreams, those missed shots became team members dying because he wasn't good enough. Prophet dreamed about the communications failure that almost happened, about losing contact with the team, about being unable to coordinate the extraction, about watching us die because his equipment failed. These were the invisible wounds that no metal could heal. The psychological cost of doing impossible things in impossible circumstances. The price we paid for being the best, for never leaving anyone behind, for being willing to walk into hell when ordered. 2 weeks after the mission, after the doctors cleared me for limited duty, I found myself sitting alone in the armory at 0300, cleaning my rifle. Couldn't sleep. Didn't want to face the dreams. So I did what I always did when my mind was too loud. I focused on the familiar ritual of weapons maintenance. The door opened and a young SEAL walked in. Fresh from training, maybe 23 years old. He saw me and hesitated, clearly recognizing who I was but uncertain whether to approach. Sir? Lieutenant Morrison? Just Morrison, I said, not looking up from my rifle. He came closer, nervous but determined. I wanted to ask about the Ramadi mission. How did you do it? 40 hostiles. Everyone's calling it impossible. I was quiet for a long moment. The kid deserved an answer, deserved to understand what he was getting into if he stayed in the teams. But how do you explain something that shouldn't have worked? How do you teach someone to do the impossible? Finally, I looked up at him. You want to know the secret? Yes, sir. It's simple. I held his gaze, making sure he understood. You remember why you're there. Not for the medals. Not for the glory. For the man next to you. For the brother who needs you to be better than you've ever been. I set down my rifle, stood up despite the protest from my healing leg. You remember that, and impossible becomes just another word. You remember that every decision you make, every shot you take, every risk you accept is about bringing your team home. And you make it happen because the alternative is unacceptable. The young SEAL nodded slowly, processing this. Is it true you've never lost a teammate? Never, I said. And I don't plan to start. But that record comes with a price. You carry every mission with you forever. Every decision. Every close call. Every moment when things could have gone wrong but didn't. It accumulates. Builds up. Changes you in ways you don't notice until one day you look in the mirror and don't recognize yourself anymore. Is it worth it? I thought about Torres, alive because we refused to leave him behind. Thought about my team, wounded but whole, still together. Thought about all the men I'd brought home over 12 years of impossible missions. Every time, I said simply. The young SEAL thanked me and left. I returned to my rifle, to the meditation of maintenance, to the only peace I could find in the quiet hours before dawn. 3 months later, after my wounds had healed enough for full duty, I was called back to Admiral Hayes's office. Same building where this had all started, but this time the atmosphere was different. Less urgent. more formal. Hayes was waiting with more alphabet agency types with forgettable faces and too much authority. Morrison, Hayes said. These gentlemen have a proposition for you. The older civilian spoke first. Lieutenant Commander, your actions in Ramadi have drawn attention at the highest levels. We're putting together a specialized task force for operations that require your particular skill set. More impossible missions, in other words. More situations where someone needed to walk into hell and bring people home. The younger civilian continued. This would mean a promotion, command of your own team, resources that regular SEAL teams don't have access to. You'd be reporting directly to JSOC, working operations that don't officially exist. I looked at them, then at Admiral Hayes. What about my current team? They come with you, Hayes said. All of them. Havoc, Doc, Ghost, Prophet. You've proven you work best together. We're not breaking up a unit that's this effective. I considered it. More missions. More impossible situations. More opportunities to lose the men I'd sworn to protect. But also more chances to do what we did best. To save lives that everyone else had written off as lost. What's the first mission? The civilians exchanged glances. There's a hostage situation in Somalia. 6 aid workers captured by Al-Shabaab. Intelligence says they're planning to execute them in 72 hours. Conventional rescue isn't feasible. The compound is too well defended, too remote. A SEAL team tried 2 months ago and lost 4 operators without getting close. So you want us to do what they couldn't. We want you to bring those people home. The older civilian's expression was grim. No one would blame you for declining. This isn't an order. It's an offer. You've already done more than anyone could ask. I thought about those 6 aid workers. Doctors and nurses who'd gone to Somalia to help people. They deserve better than to die in some compound waiting for a rescue that never came. When do we leave? 48 hours. We'll brief you on the full mission parameters tomorrow. I stood, my legs still aching from the Ramadi wound. You can brief my team together. They deserve to know what they're signing up for. Hayes nodded approvingly. Good man, Morrison. Dismissed. I found my team in the team room, where we always gathered when we had downtime. They were playing cards, bullshitting, doing what warriors do when they're not at war, pretending to be normal for a few hours. They looked up when I entered. Something in my expression must have given it away because Havoc immediately set down his cards. We got a job? Somalia. 6 hostages. Al-Shabaab compound. Another impossible rescue. Doc grinned. So basically Tuesday. Ghost checked his rifle, a habit that never stopped. When do we leave? 48 hours. Full brief tomorrow. Prophet pulled out his laptop. I'll start gathering intel now. Any preliminary information? JSOC will brief us tomorrow. But prep for full combat load. This one's going to be hot from insertion to exfil. They nodded, already shifting into mission mode. This was what we did. This was who we were. A team that specialized in doing what everyone else said couldn't be done. The Somalia mission went even worse than expected. The compound was more heavily defended than intelligence suggested. The hostages were in worse condition than we'd hoped. And the extraction required us to fight our way through an entire village while carrying 6 people who could barely walk. But we got them out. All 6. Brought them home against odds that made Ramadi look easy. After Somalia, there was Yemen. Then Syria. Then a mission in North Korea that I still can't talk about because it never officially happened. But legends come with costs. The nightmares got worse. The drinking started. The relationships back home strained under the weight of secrets we couldn't share and trauma we couldn't explain. Havoc's wife filed for divorce after the Yemen mission. Couldn't handle the not knowing, the waiting, the reality that one day he might not come home to her and Emma. Doc started having panic attacks, reliving moments when he'd held dying men in his hands and couldn't save them. The fact that he'd never actually lost a patient didn't matter. The weight of all those close calls accumulated. Ghost became more isolated, more withdrawn. Spent all his time at the range, perfecting shots that were already perfect, trying to achieve an impossible standard of precision because anything less might mean his teammates died. Prophet developed insomnia. Couldn't sleep because his mind wouldn't stop analyzing missions, looking for the mistakes that almost got us killed, finding problems in operations that had been successful by any objective measure. And me? I became harder, colder, more willing to take risks because somehow I'd started to believe my own legend. Started to think I actually was unkillable, that death really did recognize one of its own and gave me special treatment. That belief almost got us all killed in Pakistan. The mission was supposed to be simple. Extract a deep cover operative who'd been compromised. In and out in 2 hours. Light resistance expected. What we found was a trap. The operative had been turned. We'd been lured into a kill box specifically designed to eliminate my team. The moment we breached the compound, everything went wrong. Explosives that shouldn't have been there. Positions that had been prepared for our exact entry method. Enemies who knew our tactics and had planned counters for everything we might do. We were pinned down in the first 30 seconds. Surrounded in the first minute. In a situation where extraction seemed impossible in the first 5 minutes. Havoc took a round through his thigh. Doc got hit by shrapnel from an RPG that missed by inches. Prophet's communication gear was destroyed by gunfire. Ghost was cut off from the team, isolated on a rooftop with no way to rejoin us. And I realized, as bullets tore through the walls around us and explosions shook the building, that I'd led my team into an impossible situation. Not an impossible mission, we specialized in those. An actually impossible situation where survival required luck more than skill. For the first time in my career, I thought we were going to die. But then something happened that I still can't fully explain. Maybe it was training taking over when conscious thought failed. Maybe it was brotherhood pushing us beyond human limitations. Maybe it was just dumb luck finally working in our favor. Havoc, wounded and bleeding, held a doorway that should have been impossible to hold. Doc performed emergency surgery on himself while still fighting. Prophet jury-rigged communications using enemy equipment he'd captured. Ghost, cut off and alone, provided covering fire that kept dozens of enemies pinned down. And I stopped thinking like someone who believed in legends and started thinking like a SEAL again. Made decisions based on training and tactics rather than arrogance and assumption. We fought our way out over the course of 6 hours. 6 hours of continuous combat that should have killed us all. But we made it. Wounded, traumatized, forever changed, but alive. The extraction team found us 2 miles from the compound, still fighting, still moving, still together. When we finally made it back to base, when the adrenaline faded and the reality of how close we'd come to dying settled in, I made a decision. I gathered my team in our usual spot. They were bandaged, exhausted, still processing what had happened. I could see it in their eyes.